Hey guys, Fearu here. We are on episode 2. Episode 222. This is mainly what I want to talk about today. I had an interesting hand today. It wasn't that interesting. It was just, to be honest, it was just a suck out. But anyway, um, I decided that I wanted to talk about seat selection and table selection. I think these are really, really important topics. Not enough people think about them. I think it's something that I need to improve upon. Particularly table selection. Um, I don't feel like it's actually talked about enough anywhere. So I'm going to tell you guys how I kind of select what table I want to be at and if I want to change. Um, Obviously, uh, there are a number of reasons that can quickly define if you want to table change. If you see a table where guys just shoving blind, I mean there are obvious things, but we're talking about those more difficult situations where like one table looks remotely similar to another, um, and you can't really tell at first look. You know what I mean? Everyone has, there's not like some ridiculous amount of money at one table as opposed to another. Um, it just everything looks kind of stale. I don't know if you've ever like walked into a poker room and just been like, eh, you know, what's better than between these two tables? Apples and oranges. Who really knows? So I'm gonna tell you how I pick these. And the first thing I do is I kind of have a spectrum just to define the players at the table. And this is somewhat important. So my spectrum is just basically a category scale from 1 to 5, 1 being crazy and 5 being nit. So you got your crazy players, that would represent 1. If I say they're 1, they're crazy. If I say they're 0, that means they're absolutely insane. Maybe they're a 10-25 player and there was no 10-25 seats available, no 5-10, no 2-5, so they're sitting down at a 1-2 table, jamming in blind every hand. That would be a 0. And that can go all the way up to 1 depending on how crazy they're being. Then you got 2, that's kind of your loose. Maybe your 2.9 is your like loose aggressive, almost solid players. 3 is just going to be a solid player. If he's like a 3.1, he's going to be verging on tight. A 4 is going to be your tight player. And then once you get into like 4.1 and higher, you're getting into your nits. And a 5 is just like that old guy that just like, I am only playing pocket aces. And when he goes in, everyone knows it's time to get out. He's crazy, and that's how I define players. Um, you get your tight player, your crazy, loose, solid, tight, nits, whatever. And I basically scale them 1 to 5. Now, this isn't all that important, but if I use it terminology for later, I like to keep it that way. So, this is preference, and it shouldn't be preference. Hopefully I can define this later when I'm more confident in it, that it's the most optimal way to play. But my preference is to have the tightest player on my left and the loosest player on my right, and just going around the table like that. So when I make a raise, um, obviously the most likely person to fold is the tightest person, and hopefully that continues all the way around. Um, Whereas if you have the craziest person on your left going all the way around, you make a raise. Well, the craziest person is most likely to call. They'll call with the worst hand, and so they'll call. So now that gives the person two to your left better odds to call now that they're in and they're the second craziest, so they have the second highest range, so on and so forth. And that's my preference as far as seat choice. Pretty basic. But for table purposes, if I have the option, now, again, like I said, I mean, obviously there are a number of variables as far as, how much money's on the table. Is there an absolute downright crazy person there? But we're not talking about those. We're not talking about the obvious, oh, hey, this table is really bad. There's no money to be made. I mean, everyone can see the obvious. We're talking about more, oh, is that table really better than this one? And this is how I define it. Um, I want all of the players at a particular table to be very similar to the number that I would assign them. So like let's say I would rather be at a table of all tight players. like all fours, I suppose, then a table with two fours, two fives, and uh, two solids and one loose. And the reason is when I get into a multi-way pot in at just a table where everyone's very very similar, um, it makes playing that pot easier, drastically easier. Um, when if you're going up against two opponents and they both fold to flop bets 60% of the time, you know, that is a lot easier than versing two opponents, one that folds the flop 60% of the time and another one that folds the flop 40% of the time. And if they're both under that, you can have an expectation. Whereas, same thing inversely, let's say you're at just a table that's full of loose players, maybe it's a Friday night, everyone's drinking and having a good time, and you're at a table where people are likely to fold to a flop bet 30% of the time. You're playing two players like that. Well, hey, if I bet, I'm going to get I'm going to get called here. And it's better to have that than two players that are playing very, very similar to each other. Or it's better to have two players playing similar than, having two players that are completely different behind you. At least that's my preference. And this you can argue over, like I said. And that's kind of what I do. That's what I'm thinking about when I decide, hey, what table do I want to be at? And that's definitely up for debate, 100%. I'm interested to hear your guys' feedback from this particularly, because it's definitely something I don't see a lot of information on. So give me your opinions. That's like I said, that's my preference. If you have differing views, shout them out, and I will. I don't feel like remaking an entire video for the last 2 seconds. For some reason, it cut off. I will catch you guys later. Take care.